We're going on an epic trip with dream conditions and giant dogtooth. 3 friends on a mission, living at sea and diving from sunrise to sunset, with tons of epic fish and big sharks on what was the best trip of my life in Zanzibar. The one and only Latham Island. 35 miles south of Zanzibar is one of the most iconic spots for spearfishing for a good reason. It is the only place in the world that I know of where you can hunt both yellowfin and absolutely giant dogtooth in the same day. Locally known as Fungu Kizimkazi, this is one of the most important breeding grounds for seabirds in East Africa, and a completely unique environment. The island holds what might be the most famous drop-off in the world, where the biggest dogtooth tuna have been landed, as well as a big variety of other awesome species. And this is why we were coming here, to try our luck at one of these insane fish and explore this incredible place. The team was set. Eric Allard, one of the best spearfishing guys out there and a good friend, and Patrice, an awesome guy that I've been lucky to travel the world with as a client, but is now also a very good buddy. Oh, and well, me, of course, to guide and film on this adventure.
Let's go! Let's go! The tide is very low, so we need to go in this smaller boat, walk all this sand place here with very little water, and getting there.
We are on the southern tip of Zanzibar Island and heading to Latham Island for some spearfishing. And we're just boarding a little tender, let's call it, that will take us to the bigger speedboat, with which we will go. We'll cruise about 40 nautical miles out to sea. The weather report looks good, and yeah, quite excited. If it's anything like it's been lately, should be a good week.
We drove full speed offshore to find the absolute best conditions I've ever had here. For the next week, this would be our home. On one side, the legendary Latham Island, and on the other, our little boat, floating in the middle of the ocean.
Conditions look absolutely epic. This is what we were dreaming of. Super calm sea, and the water looks crystal clear. In fact, it looks like we're in the Bahamas. We're gonna go and do a bit of a warm-up session, basically hunting wahoo, some bottoms that might come up like jobfish. There's some doggies on this drop-off, and the occasional billfish. Just a place where we can sort of warm up our free diving, not too deep, focus on flashes, get our guns sighted, make sure we're shooting straight before we go for the bigger stuff, like what we're really here for, which is the big doggies.
The visibility was insane, easily over 30 meters, and the overall conditions were just so epic. I was so happy to be there. And here, and like most places, we actually spearfish with a down current. So this means we set up our drifts in the shallows and then drift into the blue, where the deep water is. We only had a couple hours before dark, so the goal was simply to find dinner. It's crazy how powerful these fish are, even the small ones. We were super stoked to have a perfect eating size doggy for dinner, so we then moved a bit further, focusing purely on blue water. I absolutely love this afternoon light, and so do the fish we were hunting. There were quite a lot of these really cool oceanic crabs floating around, and we know Mahis love them. Even when hunting in the blue, I believe it's good to consistently dive. Not only it's a good stretch for your lungs, but it actually increases your chances at a big fish too, especially here. I'll get more in depth on this on the next episode. So if you haven't, please subscribe to keep up with the news. With the sun about to go down, this would be our last drift. As we went along the drop-off, Patrice did a couple dives, and as he looked up, we finally found our favorite fish to eat there, the iconic Dorado. The fish were a bit far, but as we glanced to our right, we could see this belly or some kind of guts floating. We knew this could attract them, so we just went next to it. What a way to finish this first day. 3 different species that would be enjoyed over the next few days, and a couple nice stories to share. As we sat to enjoy our fresh caught fish, we finally understood where that belly came from.
I initially thought it was like 1 or 2, but there must have been maybe 5 or 6. And they were just swimming behind Patrice and David. And as I pointed them out, then they turned around, but by then they'd sort of swam past them. And they were swimming away. I got to the surface, they were swimming away, and I was holding a piece of stomach that I was using to like chum, a piece of Wahoo stomach. And so to try to get some distracted or interested again, I just threw this piece of stomach. It landed like in front of them, or just behind them actually, and then they just turned around and came back, and in the meantime these two were going towards them, and the fish were there. Oh, it all happened, and then we got a nice Dorado.
We are at the moment surrounded by maybe, I don't know, 6, 7 bull sharks. Massive ones, I mean, really, really fat ones. Of course, we put it a little bit of bait out there, and now they're just not, quitting the boat, and they're just, making rounds, and so nobody can fall in the water. Although tomorrow morning we will try to get in and do some footage with them. Let's see what's gonna happen.
Spending the night in the middle of the ocean is so special. Everything is so quiet in the morning. Waking up before sunrise is not an effort, and my mind instantly wonders about what will we find today. Here, with no connection, you are forced to live in a different rhythm. You're not checking your phone or if you're late for work, and if you want to entertain yourself, you need to find the simple ways. I woke up before sunrise to this beautiful light. I threw the piece of Wahoo in the water and got ready. I knew there was a good chance the big bulls from the previous day would show up. Jumping in the water alone with bull sharks is definitely something that comes with risk. But they're way more intelligent than we give them credit for. And this is one of the reasons why I dedicated my life to this. To interact and learn from them. I have so much respect for these animals, but they also make me calm and very much in the present. When interacting with them, nothing else comes to mind. And even though they were calm, I could feel them progressively getting more and more confident, swimming up from the bottom and getting a twitchy vibe. I could also hear the guys getting ready, so it was time to get out and go hunt the further drop-off. Conditions were just perfect, and we were in for another pretty epic day. We would now drive south to the legendary spot where the biggest doggies in the world have been landed while spearfishing. I always get so excited to dive here, no matter how many times we come back. This spot has produced some insane fish, and to be back here with these conditions, I could not be more stoked for our first day at the ledge.
It's amazing for a first day to be out here. The water is like crystal clear, weather is beautiful, sea is like, almost flat, so it's perfect first day. I'm gonna take it slow and see how it goes.
This is a very deep water drop-off that comes from 70 meters to around 45-50 meters, and pretty much anything can swim by here. It didn't take long for Eric to point to the hammerheads right ahead. I had seen this school here before, but always very far out in the distance. They're very shy and always seem up current, which makes it really hard to get close to them. So I just swam as fast as I could to intercept them further ahead, and that ended up being one of my favorite moments here. For me, these are the moments that make these trips, and oftentimes they have nothing to do with spearfishing, even though that's why we're here. Especially in this place, we spend a lot of time in the blue, and the only thing that keep us company, a lot of times, are the endless little creatures that float around the blue. If you look closely, there is so much happening in the water, even on the slowest days. Having that said though, we did have a very hard time finding what we were looking for. We dove very hard this day, but they were just a bit too deep. You can easily spend the whole day without pulling the trigger, and it was getting quite late. So we agreed to get a Wahoo for dinner on the last drift, if we could, of course. Patrice managed to close the gap on this very shy fish using a quite interesting technique. At the end of the day, it was time to reassess conditions and decide on the plan for the next day.
I think Patrice is pretty focused on trying to get a big doggy. I mean, it can be tedious and difficult at times because, you keep doing these drifts, and if you're not getting into the doggies, it gets pretty boring, but he's determined to try, so we're going to go out in the morning, do another morning session. We expect the weather to be very good. It's a full moon day tomorrow. That's usually a very good time for doggies.
The conditions had now changed. The sunny days became darker, and while the viz was still good on the surface, below 15 meters it became dark. The bait moved deeper, and with it also did the fish we were looking for. Everything became kinda eerie, with some big bull sharks reminding us that we are not at the top of the food chain here. These are challenging conditions for what may be the most challenging fish to hunt. In this spot, you basically have one dive per drift, and you gotta make it count. We jump up current of the drop-off, and we want to drift from the deep to the shallows. With the drop-off being around 50 meters, you cannot see it, so the noise of the reef will be the only indicator of when to dive. This is a big part of our job as a guide, to tell you when and why you dive. Ideally, you want to be down already when you hit the drop-off, and that's why it is so important to time it right. If everything goes according to plan, you dive just on top of the rainbows, and the big doggies will be just below. The fish was definitely there, but with these conditions they stayed deep and just a little out of reach. We spent the next couple days diving hard from sunrise to sunset, fully committing to our plan. We saw some absolute monsters, well over 80 kilos, but never presenting the right opportunity. This is a big part of these trips, particularly when you're hunting something special. We did have some really cool action though, with plenty of fish for dinner, which is always a big priority for us. Nice wahoo are always a presence, as well as a very good mix of reef species. And even when the conditions are not the best, this place is absolutely beautiful, and we can still have a lot of fun. And just like that, the trip was almost over. We went back after sunset and decided to jump in the water with the bull sharks, just me and Patrice. But no light and animals with a sketchy behavior made us get out quick.
We had like I think 3 or 4 times today where the fish was there when I was going up, or the fish was there just before I went down. And it's just, one dive per drift, and if you miss that dive, then you have to do the whole thing again. And that was basically the summer of the whole day, from sunrise to sunset. Big commitment.
And what about tomorrow? What's the plan?
Again, it would be the same. So we're gonna go back to the doggy spot. We want to get one.
We were down to the last morning of the trip. With only a few drifts left, we decided to go straight to the doggy spot. And as soon as we jumped in, we saw doggies around the flasher straight away. We knew something big was about to swim by. Patrice dove down on this 30 kilos fish on his left, but as I'm following him, I look to my right and there's an absolute donkey on the other side. I quickly make a sound with my throat usually known as grouper call, to get his attention. Good holding shot that hurt the fish badly. But as usual, in typical doggy fashion, the fish woke up and went full speed to the bottom, taking everything with it. I am always so impressed by the power of this fish. Nothing really compares. But pulling the trigger is just the beginning. And we knew it was way too early to celebrate. The fish took all the floats down and unfortunately got tangled on the bottom. Eric dove down quickly and shot through the handle of the last float of the system with his reel gun. As you can see, the last float was already super deep as we're being dragged with a crazy current. If we had taken just a few more seconds, everything would have been gone. Quick reflexes and teamwork allowed us to still get a hold of the system just in time. We got a line to the boat and jumped in, praying we would be able to get this monster up. All this time out there, all the effort, the commitment, countless drifts, and even more dives, all of it for this one shot at a special fish. It all came down to the last dive of the trip. And at this exact moment, the fish broke the line. In our hearts. It's always hard to leave this place behind, especially when it's on. And it definitely hurt to lose that fish, along with the whole system. But being here alone makes the trip. Coming from a very humble background in Portugal, I grew up hunting small fish in cold waters, and these experiences were just a dream far in the distance. I wanted to be out there and enjoy life with good people around me, and I was absolutely blessed with some very special friends that made it all possible. Be it spearfishing, fishing with rod and reel, or just free diving with the camera on my hands, I just wanted to be close to nature, to wildlife in some of its purest forms. That is something that will always drive me to work harder, to go further. This episode represents the first step into sharing that story. A process that started 5 years ago and completely changed my life. From having to spearfish to survive, to traveling the world, diving in some of the most insane locations on the planet,